This is clutch fluid replacement and bleeding. This is on a 848 with the radial style master. 848, 1098, 1198. Lots of things have these masters. They actually use this master on a 749 and 999, but they had a reservoir up here. And on them, this bleeder, you can see here, is inside the reservoir. Just put fluid in the reservoir. Now the first thing I like to do is suck fluid through, suck one full reservoir through with the vacuum bleeder, which is what I usually use, which is, we can see down here. This is the vacuum bleeder setup. Works really well, especially for clutches like this. So vacuum bleeder, crack the bleeder at the slave and just suck a reservoir's worth of fluid through, which you can see just dropping down as the vacuum sucks it through. Actually going quite slowly. Often it goes faster than this. And if you give the bleeder a wiggle around, that can sometimes help. Okay, so we'll call that one reservoir's worth of fluid bled through. And when I've done that, what I usually do next for the second reservoir through is I just pull the lever in, and then with the lever in, we'll go back to the slave, just crack and push the fluid out. I do that until the reservoir is empty. Fresh fluid into the slave every time you pull the lever in, and then when you crack the bleeder, the clutch springs push the piston and the slave back, so that helps push dirty fluid out of the slave. It's one way of trying to get crap fluid out of the slave. There's not really a really good way of doing it, unless you pull it off. So that's a reservoir's worth of fluid through. And I'd usually stop at the slave end after that. And the lever's still good. The lever was always good in this. There wasn't any sort of lever issue. So if we go back to the master, what we'll do now is we'll take some fluid out of the bleeder on the master. The reason the radial masters have a bleeder on the master like this is because this is the highest point. The piston is inclined, it's on an angle like so, pointing up, so you need the highest point to be able to be bleed. And so this is why there's a bleeder here, so you can bleed what's inside there. Let's put the hose for the vacuum bleeder. I don't vacuum bleed out of here, but it's a good way to control the fluid. Let's pull the lever in, crack the bleeder, and I would do this realistically until the fluid's at the level that I want. So probably 3 or 4 hits out of it. I think that's probably fine. Suck the fluid out. Okay, make sure that's tight. Set the fluid at the bottom of the maximum line, and that way you can see where the fluid is when the cap's on. You can see when it's changed colour, and it's not going to be over full and pressurise the system. And one other thing to check on these sorts of levers is freestyle. Right there is a grub screw. Some levers it's on the bottom of this little ball arrangement, and what it does is it locks this push rod that pushes the end of the piston, and you can see there free play. That's the free play in the system, and if you watch the fluid reservoir when we're doing that, and a good picture of the fluid reservoir, you should be able to see the fluid level just rising and dropping as you just take that free play out of the lever there. And you need to see the fluid going up and down. If you can't, it means that your little screw here, little push rod, is wound out too far and you haven't got any free play. And this one has a clutch switch, which is a pin underneath it, which is why the grub screw is on top. Often the grub screw is underneath. Lots of aftermarket levers I see, these grub screws are either loose or there's just no grub screw there at all. So you buy a lever, put it on, there's no grub screw to lock the piston lever, and what happens is that the piston push rod either screws all the way out and takes the free play out, or screws all the way back and end up with a lot of free play. You can adjust this here to reduce the free play, but once again you need to make sure that when you pull the lever in, you can see the fluid going up and down.